The moment I tell you this, something inside you will either resist it or recognize it. Your next life is not waiting in the future. It is being built right now through the version of you you choose to act as today before anything in your life truly changes. Something much deeper begins to happen first. Your old identity starts to break. And this is not a comfortable process. It doesn't feel like progress in the beginning. It feels like confusion, resistance, and inner discomfort. Because the version of you that you have been living as for years does not disappear peacefully. It starts to resist being replaced. Your identity is not just your name or your appearance. It is your habits, your reactions, your beliefs, your emotional patterns, and the way you see yourself in different situations. Over time, you build a strong mental image of who you are, and that image becomes familiar, even if it is limiting you. But the moment you begin to grow beyond it, something strange happens. The things that used to feel natural start feeling heavy. The way you used to think no longer satisfies you. The habits you once followed without question start feeling misaligned. Even your own thoughts begin to feel like they don't fully represent you anymore. And this creates an internal conflict. One part of you is still attached to the old identity, the version that is comfortable, known, and predictable. But another part of you is pulling towards something new, something unfamiliar, uncertain, but more aligned with your potential. And in between these two versions, you begin to feel unstable. You may not understand it at first. You might think, something is wrong. You might feel like you are losing clarity, losing direction, or losing control. But in reality, you are not breaking down. You are breaking through. Because identity does not change instantly. It dissolves slowly, and as it dissolves, it creates space. Space for new thoughts. Space for new behaviors. Space for a new version of you that has not fully formed yet. But this space feels uncomfortable because the mind doesn't like uncertainty. It prefers stability, even if that stability is limiting. So when your old identity starts to weaken, your mind tries to pull you back. It reminds you of who you used to be. It brings back old habits. It replays familiar thoughts. It tries to convince you that staying the same is safer. But growth cannot exist in the old identity, because the version of you that you are trying to become cannot fully exist inside the structure of who you used to be. Something has to loosen. Something has to shift. Something has to end. And that is why this stage feels like confusion. You are no longer fully the old version of yourself, but you are also not fully the new one yet. You are in between. And that in-between state feels unstable because it removes certainty. But this is exactly where transformation begins, because every major change in life starts with identity disruption. The moment your old patterns stop feeling natural, the process of becoming something new has already started. Even if you cannot see it clearly yet, and in this stage, the most important thing is not to rush back into old comfort. It is not to force clarity. It is not to pretend everything is fine. It is to allow the old identity to weaken without resisting the discomfort that comes with it. Because what feels like losing yourself is actually the beginning of finding a stronger version of yourself. And the moment you stop holding on to who you used to be is the moment your next life quietly begins forming within you. As you move deeper into this transition, another powerful shift begins to happen inside you. Everything that once felt familiar starts to feel slightly off. Not completely wrong, not completely gone, but no longer aligned the way it used to be. The habits you repeated without thinking begin to feel heavier. The routines that once gave you comfort start feeling repetitive. Even the environment you used to blend into so easily begins to feel like it no longer fits who you are becoming. And this is not random. This is your mind adjusting to change. Because when your identity starts to break, your perception of everything around you also starts to change. The same things are there, but you are no longer the same person experiencing them. And because you are shifting internally, the external world starts to feel unfamiliar. This is one of the most confusing stages of transformation. You don't fully feel like your old self anymore, but you also haven't fully stepped into the new version yet. So everything in between starts to feel uncertain. The mind tries to hold on to what it knows, but it also feels the pull toward something different. And in that tension, even simple things start feeling strange. Things that used to satisfy you no longer give the same feeling. Conversations that used to interest you now feel shallow. Habits that used to feel automatic now require effort. And instead of understanding this as growth, you might interpret it as confusion or loss. But in reality, it is neither. It is transition. Because your mind is not just changing thoughts, it is restructuring its entire way of relating to life. And during this restructuring phase, nothing feels fully stable. What used to feel clear becomes unclear. What used to feel important loses intensity. What used to feel natural starts feeling forced, and this is where most people panic. They try to go back to old habits, old thinking, old versions of themselves, just to regain that sense of familiarity. Because familiarity feels safe, even if it is limiting. But going back is not an option once you have started changing internally. You cannot fully return to who you were because your awareness has already shifted, and that is why this stage feels so uncomfortable. Because you are no longer able to fully live in the old pattern, but the new one has not fully formed yet. It creates a sense of inner displacement. But this displacement is not destruction, and it is adjustment. Your mind is reorganizing itself. It is questioning old assumptions. It is reevaluating what actually matters. It is slowly detaching from patterns that no longer serve your growth. And as it does this, your perception of life naturally shifts. You start noticing things you ignored before. You start questioning things you accepted before. You start feeling differently about things you once took for granted. And this is not confusion. This is awareness expanding. Because when you begin to grow, your reference point changes. What used to feel normal no longer defines you. And what used to feel unnecessary starts becoming important. This shift doesn't happen instantly. It unfolds gradually, layer by layer, and during this process it may feel like everything is unstable. But what is actually happening is that your old structure is losing its grip so a new one can form, and the discomfort you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something inside you is no longer willing to stay the same. Because once your mind starts seeing life differently, as you move further into this transition, there is a stage that often confuses people the most. A phase of mental uncertainty, overthinking, and inner conflict. And in the moment, it feels like something is going wrong. It feels like you are losing direction, losing clarity, or losing control over your own mind, but in reality, this is not a breakdown. It is a transition signal. Because when your old identity starts dissolving and everything familiar starts losing its meaning, the mind does what it always does in unfamiliar territory. It tries to figure things out. It tries to analyze, predict, and regain control, and that attempt creates mental noise. Suddenly, you start overthinking situations that never used to bother you. You start questioning decisions you once made easily. You start feeling unsure about paths that used to feel obvious. And internally, it feels like confusion is taking over. But this confusion is not random. It is the mind trying to adapt to a new version of you that it does not fully understand yet. Because your old thinking patterns were built for your old identity. They were based on familiar habits, familiar beliefs, familiar behaviors. But now, as those patterns start breaking, your mind no longer has a stable reference point. So it begins to search. It tries to rebuild logic from a space that is no longer stable, and that creates mental pressure. You may feel like you are thinking too much, but in reality, you are standing between two versions of yourself. The old one that is fading, and the new one that is still forming. And in between, there is no clarity yet, only adjustment. This is why the mind feels restless during transformation. It is not because you are going backward, but because your internal system is reorganizing itself. Old thoughts no longer feel reliable, but new thoughts are not fully established yet. So everything feels uncertain for a while. And the mistake most people make here is assuming that uncertainty means failure. So they try to escape it. They distract themselves. They go back to old habits. They avoid deep thinking. They try to silence the discomfort as quickly as possible. But what they don't realize is that this mental conflict is actually a necessary stage of growth. Because clarity does not appear instantly when you change, it forms gradually after the confusion. Think of it like restructuring a system. When old files are being removed and new ones are being installed, there is a moment when everything feels unstable. That instability is not damage, it is installation in progress, and your mind works the same way. It is not meant to give you immediate clarity during transformation. It is meant to process, reorganize, and eventually stabilize at a higher level of understanding. But before that stability comes, there is a phase of mental noise, and that noise is what you are experiencing. Overthinking increases because the mind is trying to fill gaps that no longer exist in the old structure. Doubt appears because old beliefs are weakening. Inner conflict rises because two versions of thinking are temporarily overlapping. But none of this means you are lost. It means you are between states. And being between states is uncomfortable, but necessary. Because without this phase, there is no real shift. If everything stayed comfortable, nothing would change. If everything stayed clear, nothing would evolve. So the mind must go through this adjustment period where it questions, hesitates, and reevaluates everything. And instead of resisting this phase, understanding it changes everything, because now you don't see confusion as failure. You see it as restructuring. You don't see overthinking as weakness. You see it as transition noise. You don't see uncertainty as danger. You see it as movement toward something new. And slowly, that understanding reduces resistance. Because what you stop fighting, you start observing. And what you observe, you begin to understand. And what you understand, you stop being controlled by. And that is when the mental noise starts to settle. Not because the mind suddenly becomes silent, but because you are no longer afraid of the process it is going through. And the moment you realize that your confusion is not a sign of going backward, but a sign that your mind is upgrading itself, is the moment you begin to step out of mental chaos and into deeper awareness. As this transition continues, another powerful shift begins to happen quietly in your life. You start to feel a natural distance from things that once shaped your entire world. Not because you are forcing it, but because your awareness is expanding. People, environments, habits, conversations, distractions, they all begin to lose the same emotional grip they once had on you. And this is where isolation begins to appear. But this is not the kind of isolation most people fear. It is not punishment. It is not loneliness in the traditional sense. It is a stage of separation that naturally happens when your internal state begins to shift away from your old identity. Because when you change internally, you cannot remain fully connected to everything that belonged to your old version of life. You start noticing it slowly. Certain conversations no longer interest you the way they used to. Certain environments feel mentally heavy instead of comforting. Certain relationships feel like they belong to a version of you that no longer exists. And instead of forcing yourself to stay the same, you naturally begin to pull back. Not out of hatred, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Because growth always creates distance before it creates clarity. This stage can feel uncomfortable because the mind interprets separation as loss. It thinks you are losing connection, losing identity, losing support. But what is actually happening is something much deeper. You are making space. Space for clarity. Space for reflection. Space for a new version of yourself to form without interference. Because transformation cannot fully happen in constant noise. If your mind is always surrounded by old influences, old patterns, and old environments, it becomes very difficult to hear your own internal shift. So life naturally starts to reduce external distractions, not to punish you, but to realign you. And during this stage, you may feel like you are alone more often. But this aloneness is not emptiness. It is exposure. It exposes your thoughts without distraction. It exposes your habits without influence. It exposes your patterns without external validation. And in that exposure, you begin to see yourself more clearly than ever before. Because when everything around you becomes quieter, your inner world becomes louder. You start noticing what you actually think, not what others have influenced you to think. You start feeling what you actually feel, not what you used to suppress through distraction. You start questioning things you never questioned before because now there is space to think deeply. And that space is essential for transformation. Because as long as your mind is constantly occupied by external input, it cannot fully process internal change. But when external noise reduces, your awareness increases. And in that awareness, deeper understanding begins to form. This is why many people going through change feel misunderstood or disconnected for a while. Not because something is wrong with them, but because they are no longer fully aligned with their previous version of life. And instead of seeing this as loss, it should be seen as filtering. Life is removing what no longer matches your direction. Not all at once, but gradually. Not aggressively, but naturally. And what remains is what aligns with who you are becoming. But during the process, it feels uncertain. Because you are no longer fully connected to the past, but not yet fully rooted in the future. You are in between, and in between stages. Always feel empty before they feel meaningful. Yet this emptiness is not void. It is preparation. It is creating silence so you can hear your own direction more clearly. It is removing distraction so you can see your own thoughts more clearly. It is reducing influence so you can build your own foundation more clearly. And if you resist this stage, you stay confused. But if you allow it, something powerful happens. Clarity starts to return, but from within you, not from outside sources. You begin to understand yourself without noise. You begin to see your direction without influence. You begin to feel your path without distraction. And slowly, what felt like isolation transforms into alignment. Because the truth is, you were never being left alone. You were being separated from what no longer belongs to your next life. And the moment you understand that this distance is not loss, but preparation, is the moment you begin to step closer to your new self. As you move deeper into this transformation, there comes a stage that feels almost silent on the outside but extremely intense on the inside. A stage where nothing seems to be happening, yet everything is being tested. This is the phase where your discipline is tested in silence. Because before your life visibly changes, before results appear, before recognition comes, there is a period where you are doing the right things, but not seeing immediate rewards. You are trying to grow, but nothing external is confirming your progress. And in that silence, your consistency is tested, not by the world, but by yourself. Because when motivation is gone and no one is watching, your true level is revealed. It is easy to stay disciplined when emotions are high, when inspiration is strong, when results are visible. But transformation does not happen in those moments. It happens in the quiet spaces where no one claps for you, no one encourages you, and nothing outside validates your effort. In that silence, your mind starts questioning everything. It asks, "Is this even working?" It says, "Maybe I should stop for a while." It reminds you of comfort, of easier paths, of old habits that require less effort. And suddenly, discipline is no longer about action. It becomes a battle between your present effort and your past comfort. Because your old identity does not leave quietly. It returns in moments of silence. It tries to pull you back into familiar patterns. It reminds you of shortcuts. It offers you temporary relief. And if you are not aware, you slowly drift back without even realizing it. But this stage is not designed to break you. It is designed to reveal you. Because anyone can act when motivation is present. But only those who are truly changing can continue when motivation disappears. Silence exposes whether your discipline is real or dependent on emotion, and this is why this phase feels heavy. There is no external reward yet. There is no visible progress yet. There is no immediate confirmation that you are on the right path. Only repetition, only effort, only consistency without applause. And that is exactly where most people stop. Not because they are incapable, but because silence feels like failure. The mind expects quick feedback. It expects validation. It expects signs that something is working. But growth does not always give instant feedback. Sometimes it only gives resistance first. And if you misunderstand that resistance, you quit too early. But if you stay, something begins to shift internally. Because every time you continue without motivation, you strengthen something deeper than motivation. You strengthen discipline. Every time you act without emotional support, you build identity. Every time you show up in silence, you create proof within yourself that you are no longer dependent on external triggers. And slowly, discipline becomes stable. Not emotional, not temporary, but stable. And that stability is what separates repetition from transformation. Because your new life is not built in moments of excitement, it is built in moments of silence where you continue even when nothing is pushing you forward except your decision. And in this stage, you begin to understand something very important. Discipline is not about intensity. It is about continuity. It is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about not stopping when nothing feels rewarding. It is about continuing even when the outcome is not visible yet. It is about trusting the process when nothing outside confirms it. And this is where your identity starts to solidify. Because every silent action is shaping a new version of you. A version that does not rely on emotion, does not depend on validation, and does not wait for motivation. A version that simply continues because that is who it has decided to become. And slowly, without dramatic change, your consistency begins to create visible transformation. Not because the silence ended, but because you remained consistent inside. And in the moment you realize that your discipline in silence is what is building your future life, is the moment you understand that you are already becoming someone new. One action at a time, even when no one is watching. After you pass through silence, confusion, separation, and testing, there comes the final and most important shift. The moment where everything you have been going through starts to make sense, not because the world changed, but because you changed how you respond to it. This is the stage where your new life actually begins, but it does not begin with something dramatic. It begins with a decision, a simple but powerful shift. You stop identifying with your old self, and you start acting from the version of you that you are becoming. Because transformation is not completed when your thoughts change. It is completed when your actions change. You can understand everything about growth, awareness, discipline, and change, but if you continue acting from your old identity, your life will stay the same. The loop will continue in a new form, even after awareness, even after understanding. That is why this final stage is so important. It is the point where knowledge is no longer enough. Because now, you don't just know you are changing. You must live like you are changing. And this is where most people hesitate. They still think like the old version of themselves, even after realizing they want something different. They still act cautiously, even after understanding they need boldness. They still delay action, even after seeing the importance of consistency. Because identity does not change just by realization, it changes by repetition of new behavior, and at this stage, life gives you a very clear choice. Either you continue responding as your old self, or you start acting as your new self. And the interesting thing is, your external situation does not instantly change. You are still in the same environment. You still face the same challenges. You still feel the same resistance. But internally, something is now different. You are aware that you have a choice, and that awareness is powerful, because now, every moment becomes a decision point. Will I react the old way, or will I respond differently? Will I delay again, or will I act now? Will I go back to comfort, or will I choose growth? And each small decision starts shaping your new identity, because identity is not what you think about yourself. It is what you repeatedly do. And when you start acting differently, even in small ways, your mind slowly begins to accept that change. It starts adjusting its patterns. It starts updating its internal model of who you are. And over time, what once felt unnatural begins to feel normal. This is how a new life is built. Not through sudden transformation, but through repeated alignment with a new version of yourself. And something very important happens during this stage. Resistance becomes less emotional and more manageable. The same challenges still appear, but your reaction to them changes. You are no longer fully controlled by old patterns. You are no longer automatically pulled back into the loop. Instead, there is awareness, and within that awareness, there is choice. And that choice, repeated consistently, becomes identity. Slowly, you begin to notice that you are no longer the same person who started this journey. Your responses are different. Your thinking is different. Your behavior is different. Not because life changed you, but because you chose to act differently long enough to become someone new. And that is the final shift, when becoming replaces trying, because at that point you are no longer waiting for your next life to begin. You are already living it through your actions, your decisions, and your consistency. And the moment you realize that your new life was never something you had to reach, but something you had to become through action, is the moment you finally step out of the old identity completely and enter the life you were always meant to live. So stop waiting to become someone new. Start acting like it now, because the moment your actions change is the moment your next life quietly begins.